Prison where I spent my formative years was cleverly disguised as a schoolyard. They shared similar elements. A mangled basketball hoop, rusted monkey bars, and a melancholy swing set. This personal hell was in reality in elementary school the most. I, on the other hand, had grown fond of the idea that this educational structure had become a breeding ground for some strange government experiment gone awry. Every day I was forced out of my mother's car and placed in this prison. I would walk the dimly lit maze of hallways as one of my mouse-like prison mates stopped to examine me. It was as if he had just smelled a large hunk of cheese at the end of the labyrinth. "Move it, Porky!" "Watch it, Blob!" would echo in my ears. But I was too clever for them, so I refused to reply. I knew a response would only sink me to their pathetic level. There were jailbreaks almost every day. Inmates were forever desperate to return to their normal lives. I was convinced that my prison mates were normal, happy children outside these prison walls. But I soon realized that one's true identity was actually formed in the yard. During recess, the whole flock would converge, and I, the black sheep, would be left to fend for myself. I was assaulted both verbally and physically on the appropriately named playground. I retreated from this hardship to more simple days of Lincoln Logs, Slinkies, and Legos which surrounded me at home. The only thing I needed to make me happy was the love of my mother, and 7 hours a day in front of the boobs. Even though I was considered an outcast, we still shared one common fear on the playground. His name was Bam Bam. When he was a free man, he went by the name of Francis. The other inmates and I felt it didn't sound as menacing to say we got an ass kicking from a boy named Francis Bombowski. So we nicknamed him Bam Bam. It was fitting for two reasons. Bam, he hit you, and bam, you hit the ground. Bam Bam was like a predator waiting for his prey. I never thought they fed him enough during lunch, causing his anger and hostility to be aimed towards his fellow man. As long as I stayed away from him, he stayed away from me. It was those who milled around him or got in his way who found themselves screaming for the prison nurses. Simply making eye contact with this savage was hazardous to one's health. Even the guards were afraid of him and would politely ask for him to head to the warden's office. I found myself envious.
How many times do we have to tell you?
You're not the boss in the classroom. The teacher is.
Meanwhile, I'd be made fun of while my comrades read the new issue of Highlights. But on one particular day, things would change. I may have been abandoned by my mother, forced into a learning facility, and roasted by prison residents, but my pride would ultimately be tested. Fast up, wide load, chubby. The list went on and on in my mind as we poured through the doors onto the yard for another hard day of labor. As I was pulled along, all I wanted to do was escape the madness. Then it happened. As I looked up towards this mass that seemed to block out all of the sun, I could feel my body tingle as all the blood rushed from the farthest reaches of my brain and into the very tips of my pudgy toes. At that moment, I knew death himself had come for me, a messenger of Satan in the flesh. Francis Bam Bam Bombowski had come to play. I was simply making my way towards my favorite seat to wallow in self-pity when destiny intervened.
You usually keep to yourself. How come you decided to commit suicide today, fat boy?
Bombowski bellowed as his arm reached out, connecting powerfully with my shoulder. His shove made me realize what an old building would feel like as it's being destroyed. Time slowed as the people around me became a colorful blur, with only their usual chants remaining as clear as the sky above. The voices rang out like an unrehearsed choir, with all the sounds directed at me, and in particular, the amount of excess flesh I had accumulated up to this point in my life. It was time for me to take a stand. I felt like David facing Goliath. As the guards rushed over to take me away, the light from the sun was blinding, but in my mind I could see clearly. No longer was I in a prison. I was in a schoolyard and free. The children were happy. The teachers looked like teachers. But it didn't matter. My inner torment had already begun. I had an unwanted power over the other children. I was feared. Just like Francis. Violence had brought me a false sense of respect. It condemned me to become part of a pecking order that feels it must destroy the weak and shun those who do not fit into society's mold. It was survival of the fittest. And I had just been born into it.